Welcome back to our Mindful Trinity viewers and our listeners. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule and just making some me time to listen to a podcast. And I'm so grateful that you're actually on my podcast. So today we are joined by two very special guests, actually a husband and wife team. They're very keen on educating people in and out of their circles. And also on the importance of gender equality. Hence, we are here on our podcast, hoping to share some insights that ultimately help society to heal, grow, and move forward together. So welcome, Ravinol Chambers, a film producer and a director at Inspired Films, and his good wife, Tina Chambers, who is a teacher from Birmingham in the UK.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, lovely to be here with you and your listeners.
Awesome. I pronounced your name correctly, your last name, in fact.
Chambers, you did, yeah. But the film company is called Be Inspired Films. Almost the same.
Okay.
Be Inspired.
Okay, cool. Human error there. Sorry about that.
Okay, no problem at all.
Thank you. So, okay, we're going to be discussing gender stereotypes in society. And I think over the years or over generations, women actually evolved a lot. Men is also evolving with us, some slower than the others, but we are making progress as we go along. So to Ravinol, you tell us more about your organization, Be Inspired Films. So what is it called again?
Yeah, you got it right. Be Inspired. Be Inspired
awesome.
Films.
Okay. And what led you to become a filmmaker, a change maker, and a podcaster?
Well, thanks for the question. I mean, essentially I grew up in Ireland, in Dublin, and from a very young boy, I was always had those questions, the big questions about, where are we? Why are we here? What's it all about? And they didn't go away, throughout my teens and so on. Although as a teenager, I wanted to be a stockbroker. In my 20s, I became a monk, so quite different. Yes. But the 7 years as a monk I spent in my 20s was really deeply trying to answer those questions. And it led me I lived 2 years in East Africa. I know you're in South Africa. I was in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. Okay. And then I also spent a year in India, in Vrindavan, which is a very sort of holy place. And I spent a year there studying the ancient books of wisdom. And when I finished, when I sort of came out of the monk life, if you like, and realized that actually I still wanted to practice a spiritual life and I wanted to do something that had benefited other people. But I just realized I would probably be able to do that over a longer period of time if I was married and fulfilling and, putting my skills out into the world. The monk life, I see it kind of as my spiritual student years, if you like. Yes. And I was trying to figure out what to do. I'd done a degree in psychology when I was young. And then I did various jobs when I was going back into the world of work, but I went back to university and did an MBA, which is a business master's. And after that, I was trying to understand what to do. And I retraced my steps. And in East Africa, I'd made a film in 1995 to help people understand the work we were doing there with street children and education. And I'd made another film a little later, and I kind of put two and two together. And I thought, the film landscape has changed. Now we have YouTube. It's easier to reach an audience. And I want to do something that is about affecting positive change. So I put the two together. And that was how Be Inspired Films was born.
Lovely.
About just over 10 years ago. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, I know you mentioned that you've been making films for about 10 years now. So can you tell us how many films have you made thus far?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably close to 1,000 short films. Wow. Anywhere between sort of 2 and 10 minutes for organizations all around the world about the work that they're doing, the positive impact that they're having. But the film that I've spent the last 4 years making is my first, what we call feature film. So like an hour and 20 minutes. So that's the first film of that magnitude, if you like, that I've made. It's called Road to Vrindavan.
Yes, absolutely wonderful. Can you tell us more about this documentary?
Yeah, I mean, it started by getting an invitation from a friend to drive down the west coast of India in a tuk-tuk which is actually one of these guys. I don't know if your viewers can. So anyone who's just watching on video, you can see it's like a little 3-wheel vehicle.
Yeah.
If you're on radio, you or on sound, you'll probably have a rough idea what it's like a taxi if you're in Thailand or India. And very dangerous and exciting roads in India. You know, quite a the person who trained us to drive the tuk-tuk said, we don't drive on the left-hand side of the road. We drive on what's left on the road. Basically, wherever you see a gap, you just go for it. I'd lived in Vrindavan 20 years before as a monk. So I felt a real personal pull to do the trip. But then the initial part of this, in all honesty, was just to document by speaking to people as we traveled, how they understood, why were there challenges for girls specifically in getting into education or in India, and there are economic, there's social, traditional, cultural, religious kind of aspects to it. And that was really what it was about. It was kind of quite a simple story. And I came back to the UK after that first trip. And as you can imagine, many people were very excited about it. But I had a criticism, which was, why are you doing this film or telling this story as a man? I guess the implication must have been that it's a woman's issue. And I thought to myself, wow, like, I was surprised, if I'm honest, and a little bit not. And I started to speak to people around the world working in this field. And I said, I have a feeling that this divisive kind of separatist thinking surely could be part of the problem in the first place. And it's not really, it doesn't feel like it's a good way forward for a solution. So we went back to India again and spent another whole month. And this time we spoke to brothers, fathers, uncles, aunts, mothers, really tried to have a community-wide perspective on these issues, and also looked at projects that were working with men and boys as well, to help develop a mindset that doesn't hold girls back, but actually supports their progress as part of the community. So it took on a whole new aspect. So
I actually think it's more about the mindset, and a lot of men, not only men, it's also women. Women also still have that mindset that we need to be this way here because society expects us to be this way. And they don't want to take that leap of faith or the step forward because they're afraid what will happen to them and what will society regard them as. So it's about fear as well.
Definitely, yeah. I think we all feel a lot of safety when the roles are very clearly defined. You know, it's kind of like everyone knows to stay in their lane and kind of what's expected of them. And as things are changing, which they are, you know, the last few years have been huge. You know, we've seen, you know, Black Lives Matter. We've seen, you know, so much of the feminine kind of rising up in the world, and people making us more aware of that as well. And so naturally, as much as many of us are excited about that change, other people are also uncomfortable because change is difficult, isn't it? The rules, they're like, hang on a second, you mean you're changing the rules? How am I supposed to, as a man, you know, understand that? Or how am I, as a person, if I'm not a person of color, how am I supposed to understand it? Like, so support people. Because an example that I often think of is like, let's just say if we turn around today and we say, we wish men, or as you say, men and women with that older mindset didn't have that attitude. But they won't change just by us wishing they would change. But they won't change just because we say they should change. And maybe they are only going to be able to change a little bit. Maybe it's the next generation that we need to educate in a new way.
I think that's what one of the film really highlights, is that you speak to a lot of young people as well. So younger people is going to really resonate with people across all cultures globally as well, and look at their own lives as well.
Yeah,
so it's quite powerful from that point of view.
Yeah, definitely, because even though the context of this film, Road to Vrindavan, is set in India, and some of the you know, the incredible, you know, young women that we speak to, you know, they're is India, but at the end of the day, young people all around the world share, you know, that shared experience of being anxious about the future, hoping and having hopes and dreams, hoping that the society, the family can support them in those dreams.
Yes.
And what the film highlights is that often in India, because of certain cultural or traditional norms, what is possible for a girl or what should be acceptable for a girl is restricted. And often, if it's fears of safety, like you said, fears are there, and actually fears are legitimate. Sometimes there is a legitimate concern for safety, but the thing is that how you respond to it is the thing. So if I'm a father, I'm worried my daughter might not be safe. So one solution could be I'll just keep her at home and not let her go out to school. Problem solved, right? Or so that's where the safety is from men. But the brunt of that falls on the girl. She's the one that has to be restricted, not that the men should better, or stop harassing the women. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting dynamic. And to be honest, we see it here in England as well. I'm sure you possibly see it in South Africa or America, wherever people are listening.
Sure.
So I think we're going through a shift in that. But I think it is uncomfortable for people. So I think our best hope is, like Tina said, with the younger generation, that they just grow up just understanding these things much more clearly. And
that's true. It's actually about the mind shift. I remember I actually left South Africa in the early 2000s. I first left to the US and I spent 9 months. I actually left alone, without any family, without any friends. And I learned to get out of my comfort, get out of my shell, in order to learn, in order to grow, make friends, and live. Because if I did not, I would have not been very happy. I would have been very depressed. So I came back home. I stayed for about 3 months and I left again, this time to the UK. And I lived there for about 2 years. And again, alone, no friends, no family. And I learned to actually, you could say I actually grew. I grew during those years and those months. So I actually thought I can actually make it on my own and I can travel wherever in the world. So it was.
Can I ask you, did any of your community or whatever give you any opinions about that? You're traveling around as a single woman and everything. What was the community opinion of that?
Well, they could see that I'm a strong-willed person, and whatever I put my mind to, I achieve it. But there were some family members, like cousins and friends. They were too scared to take that step, and they actually looked up to me to say that I'm a very fearless person, and they would not do that. They actually thought something is wrong with me. How can I do what I'm doing? Yeah. And I actually thought that I am fearless and I can achieve anything and I can travel wherever. So it was 2014. I decided to take a trip to India, but this time with my mother, because no one in my family wanted me to go alone. They said it's nothing like America or London to travel alone. And I said, okay, fine. I'll go with my mother. And I did understand what they meant. It was very challenging for 2 women to travel India alone. I experienced a lot of challenges, and upon leaving India, I told myself I will never go there again, but I healed and I'm ready to go again. But this time I'm not going to go alone.
Yes. This is the thing that is interesting is that, often in conversations, whether it's between liberals or conservatives or whatever the 2 sides of an argument is that it's really important to address the other side. So like, for example, if those conservatives who want to just keep girls inside, but you have to understand their fears. It comes from a legitimate or even a good place, that it's just that it's not necessarily a growth mindset, it's more of a protection mindset.
Absolutely. So can both of you tell us, how have these films impacted your personal lives?
I'll let Tina go first on this, because the film for me took up a lot of my time, and Tina was we learned a few things about our own family dynamic and relationship in the making of it, but I'll let you with me being so involved with it.
Well, I have to admit, at first, when you first told me about the charity challenge and that you wanted to make a film along the way, I was just like, oh, how long is this going to take? I have to be at home alone with the 2 young boys. I just wanted to know which day you're going, which day are you back? I never envisaged it was going to take so many years of our lives, and that we would have all these like wonderful discussions along the way as well about our own marriage, our own lives. So, I mean, it's been brilliant. We've learnt a lot about each other, what our boundaries are, and what we believe about issues, a lot of stigmas around gender, what we think, doing the right thing is, but also, what makes us work as a family.
And how we're going to bring up the boys as well.
Yeah.
We've got 2 boys, 9 and 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's kind of, it's helped us to really think through, if we it's that whole thing of be the change, so like if we want to see a new generation of boys who grow up respecting women and being supporters of women, then it's not going to happen by accident.
Yeah. In the beginning, I didn't want boys to the issues in the film. I said I want them to think girls and boys are always equal, and this is, it's normal, and they should have the same opportunities. But then I realized, actually, no, there's so much work to be done, that it's important that they know from a young age how unfair society can be to girls, and what their part is to try and improve that, not this pretend rosy, we're all equal. So that's how the film really made me realize that actually we've got to work together on this.
And I think that was a massive theme of the film, as it turned out in the end, was that if this is a societal issue, and it's not a women's issue, and so I think in a way that mirrors my attitude, if I'm really honest, was quite a stereotypically gendered kind of idea. I never thought of it, the man. I go out into the world, I do adventure, I do all these things, I earn the money, and a little bit separate, kind of like, that's my domain. Your domain is the house and the family, and kind of like almost like we were in separate teams or separate lanes. And it was almost a bit kind of separate in a way. And actually the whole kind of theme of the film about, no, actually we have to work together on these issues, actually brought us together much more as a partnership in like, how is what I'm doing affecting you? You know what I mean? Being more mindful, more inclusive, more considerate. So now if I'm invited to go away for a project, I don't just agree to do it and then just tell Tina I'm going. Now it's more of like, it'll be, I'm not sure, I don't know if I want to be away that long, or you know what I mean? It's much more of a partnership. And also I think, I don't want to speak for you, but I think Tina, it's hard. I mean, looking after the children and all of that stuff. And I didn't always appreciate that.
I had to sort of value my own role a bit more and say, you couldn't do all this if I didn't do what my part was for this period of time. So important to learn that.
And to really value it and appreciate it, and also then to be considerate when Tina had concerns or worries or fears about things. Previously, when I was working so hard, I was quite stretched, so I didn't have a lot of extra capacity to kind of emotionally sort of be the support that sometimes naturally you need to be for each other.
Of course.
And I would kind of I didn't have much fuel left in my tank, if you like. So now I'm much more mindful of that. That it's really, really important to hear and Tina and like be there for her, and not see it as something to be, I don't know if any kind of personal development, when we have uncomfortable feelings, one approach is to just shut them down and to go, oh, what do you mean? There's no problem. Everything's fine, and like that. And I think I was a little bit like that. And
So-
now I can sit with it and just hear it and not see it as a sort of a criticism of me. I always felt in the past that if there was any issue or Tina had any concerns or whatever, I'd be like, everything's fine. What are you talking about? And now I think we can have much more honest conversations.
It's more communication. I think communication is key. It's for any relationship, even in a normal family. It's just like siblings and brothers, sisters, father, mother, everyone. And communication is key. And if you actually go through all of your challenges alone, no one knows what's bothering you and where you need help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's true. It's so the two parts to that are like not being afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I felt like for me personally, I had to see myself as I'm not being weak here. I'm not, if I'm struggling, it's actually, something we have a right as a family together to work on.
Yeah.
So, not being afraid to ask.
Yeah.
How does gender stereotypes affect society? Whilst making this film, I'm sure you actually have some sort of experience through that.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it puts a lot of pressure on people to be a certain way. I think this is what a man is, this is what I should be doing, and I'm a woman, this is what I should be doing. And
exactly, so it can be kind of limiting in some respects because it says this is what you should allow for individuality too. So if you're a young boy or young girl growing up, we say that, don't we? Oh, that's a girly thing, you shouldn't be doing that, or that's not for a boy thing. And so first of all, it's limiting, but also if you are different from whatever the norm is, there's a sort of an almost we grow up with it, becomes so part of our natural biases that we can start to feel there's something wrong with me, or I'm not what a man should be, or I'm not what a woman should be. And also it kind of creates certain confines, especially in a very traditional society like say in India, that if you don't fit this cardboard kind of cutout idea of what we tell you should be, then we won't respect you.
True.
You know what I mean?
True. Yes.
And in a society like that, kind of respect and status and being considered a good husband, a good wife, or whatever is very important. And so it means that if you're any way outside of those lines, then you're probably not one of the worst things in life is feeling like you're not able to be yourself.
True.
I was going to say it can be very damaging to you as a person to not feel like you can be accepted and express yourself for who you are.
True, very true. I actually also think sometimes unconsciously people tend to say whatever in their mind. They're actually not mindful of the way they actually come across, the way they speak to each other. And I've been practicing this recently as well. I've been making notes. I'm actually addressing somebody else. I'm actually speaking to myself. So I know what I'm doing. When I'm doing something wrong, I'm saying something that's actually not good, I know when to actually stop and take a step back, reevaluate what I just said to myself or somebody else, and apologize.
Good practice.
Yeah, we have to.
But that requires, as you say, awareness, self-awareness. I think sometimes, whether it's a film or a piece of art like that, it might be that all it does is just awaken us to another way of seeing something that we weren't aware of before. Sure. And even if that's all it is, it might just then prompt us the next time, as you say, that we say something or we interact with someone related to that topic, that maybe we go, oh, okay, maybe this time I might think about it or speak about it slightly differently.
True.
But you don't know what you don't know, right?
That's true. You know what? I think there's so much going on in the world right now, and we need more kindness. We need to learn how to be kind to each other and be kind to ourselves as well. I always say, if you cannot be kind to yourself, it's very difficult for you to be kind to somebody else.
Yeah. And that's a really good point. I think it's something that I learned as well with the film, was by feeling greater empathy and understanding by kind of putting myself, I guess, in the shoes of the young women and their families that we met. I think by almost feeling more empathy for them, I also allowed myself to be a bit more kind to myself as well. Because I think the inverse was there. Like when I'm pushing myself too hard, then I'm also, it's not ideal, but I'm also kind of hard on other people. Because if someone is not working as hard as me, I'm like, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? But actually, so when you start to develop kindness, as you say, you know, you can give it to others and to yourself as well.
Yes. I've also learned that not everyone can be like you. Imagine if everyone's like you. How boring will this world be?
Yeah.
Exactly.
No?
Yeah.
So what do you think affects society or affects gender roles in society?
I think definitely upbringing, isn't it? It's many things. Obviously, media, the archetypal stories we hear, whether it's you know through children's, Disney. It's always like the princess and the prince. You know, they're all very, very sort of gender stereotyped. I mean, they are changing slowly.
Yeah.
But I saw a great quote, which for me kind of sums it up. I think there's the quote, "Boys will be boys." And I have never ceased to be amazed, whether it's older people who are from a quite conservative culture, or whether it's even gender studies people, as much as their views might be generally about supporting women, when that quote comes out, kind of "boys will be boys," everyone kind of just laughs about it. It's almost like it gets a pass. And so it said "boys will be boys," and it's crossed out. And then it says "boys will be how we teach them to be."
That's true. That's very true.
And so I feel like it's the way in which these things will change will be through education, awareness, sensitization, and so on.
It's like when a man does something that society think is not good, it's acceptable. He can do whatever he wants because he is a man. But if a woman does the same thing, it'll be like name calling and basically downgrading her because she did the same thing that the man did. But it's actually both did something wrong. They should address it and reevaluate themselves and try and make a change not to do that again.
And one of the amazing things that Tina said, so we had a little chat, about how are we going to bring up the boys differently, and we talked about lots of different things. But on that point you just mentioned, Tina made this amazing point. She said to me about we need to teach them that girls, and they're fallible, they'll make mistakes, they're flawed, just like everyone is. And therefore they deserve kindness, love, and forgiveness. And so I think we see that in society. If a woman is what we deem to be perfect, we can respect her. But if she's not perfect, we can tear her to pieces. You see it in the media all the time.
It's both extreme, isn't it? It's pressure to be the perfect sister, daughter, wife, mother, and not have any sort of human feelings. It's not right.
And actually, I saw a book recently that someone's written. I can't remember the exact phrasing. Supposed to be all of those wholesome things, and you're supposed to be like super sexy as well. It's like so much pressure on women. Like it's like, well, like that those things appear to be at odds with each other, but like there's just expectation on women, and almost like they go.
You're right, and I think that's how young girls develop all these psychological problems, eating disorders such as bulimia and anorexia, because society wants them to look a certain way, and they put pressure on themselves to starve themselves or overeat and just to take everything out.
And then you see the same with boys, like you forget, like when I mean, I'm actually going to be nearly 50 and you're nearly 40, right? And then you sort of get more comfortable with yourself, and you forget in the teenage years how intense the protein and everything, and boys are supposed to have like muscles and act in a certain way, and so this is back to your point about the gender stereotypes. They're quite narrow. They don't really allow much room,
Mhm.
and they're almost trying to force young people to be something that most of them are not.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Very
You know,
true.
and that this congruent kind of thinking is it actually is massively affecting their potential, because your potential can really grow when you're in your own flow, right? When you're really in
Absolutely.
your own, fully expressing yourself. So if you're trying to spend all your energy trying to be someone else, it's not going to help, is it?
Absolutely. You know, it actually makes me think of a quote that I read not so long ago. In fact, I always think about this quote whenever I'm dealing with people, or yeah, just like, I mean, not just people, anyone for that matter, even animals or myself. It is actually by Mother Teresa. She says, everyone, they actually has, okay, society, or I think, I'm not quite sure on the real words, but I will try and grasp it a little. Society actually has hunger, not of the stomach. They actually have hunger of the heart. Everyone's looking for love, not for food.
Very true, actually.
Yeah.
Powerful.
It is powerful. And actually, in a society where we value output and, you know, income and achievements and all of these outward kind of symbols of status or progress, it's you know, miss things like kindness and that personal touch where we value people more than things. It's actually really, really easy in the pursuit of all of those things to kind of, and it's kind of a little bit like our experience in the pursuit of all of those things, you kind of are missing out on the beauty of the people right around you.
That's
often
true.
the people even closest to you.
Yeah.
You know,
So I'm just trying to think. We actually mentioned, or we actually discussed a lot about the impact, you know, gender equality has on society. A lot of them were negative, and some were actually positive as well. But how do you think, maybe one of you can actually answer this, how do you think we can actually move forward from any of the negative impact?
I'll let you go first.
I guess it's to learn from mistakes in the past and open up our eyes to what, you know, what long-term effects are of having negative attachments to old ways, stigmas, and learning to celebrate things that are different about people. Like there are differences in genders. Maybe we do need to have a different approach at different stages in like children's lives. Maybe teenagers, it's different. Young adults, you know, we all have, that's the whole point of stereotypes, is we don't all stay the same. We have different times.
Evolve,
yeah, we have different choices. Like I'm educated, I had a job, but I decided to stay at home to bring up my boys. But now I'm ready to go back in the world, and I don't want judgment either way from anyone. I don't want people to praise me, and I don't want people to criticize me. It's my choice. So I think that could be the positive, is by seeing people more as people, humans first, more than gender. So yeah, and celebrating what we say. We could say generally women are very strong, they can do this, they can, and understanding that, you know, boys also can have weaknesses, so we can flip it, that it's actually good both ways.
Yes.
And I guess as well, not being not looking for an instant fix either, like a panacea. Like, okay, it used to be like this, now just tell us what it's like now. Like oversimplifying it, you know, it is like any journey that's worthwhile takes time. And, you know, there are going to be challenges along the way, and there's going to be breakthroughs along the way. And we need to all figure it out together. It's not like somebody's just going to appear tomorrow and just come up with the perfect new blueprint, you know.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like understanding, I think I've described it in relation to the film, it's a tension between progress and tradition. So it's not that tradition is bad. It's just that, you know, there is incredible wisdom from the past that we should, you know, that's still really relevant and uplifting today. I think it's just not being afraid to look at some aspects of tradition and realize maybe they're no longer uplifting people in the way that maybe it was originally intended.
Yeah,
it appears now that it's hurting people. And so being willing and able to adapt and change so that everyone gets the best chance that they can.
Yeah, that's true. You know, when we actually started our discussion, you mentioned, you know, we actually change, or we try to train the minds of kids, or the future generations. It will be very beneficial. I'm not sure whether you are already, or maybe if you are not, you can actually think about it. Maybe you should make a feature film or a movie or something of that sort for kids.
Yeah, that would be awesome, actually. Yeah.
Whether it's in a cartoon format or anything, you know, I mean, it would be very nice, because you know what, I always watch young children watching Cartoon Network and whatever, and most of the content on there, it's not nice at all.
Yeah, we're always having to
we have
sort
that
of
issue
say
with
to
our
our
voice.
we're saying like you hear something and you're like, what was that?
Yeah, what they're putting into their minds is a bit scary sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a really good point. Yeah, it is a really good point.
So maybe we should start working on that.
That's an idea. Thanks for that.
Okay. Workload involved in filmmaking and also running a business. What are some of the techniques that you can actually recommend to our audience that you use on a daily basis to create a healthy lifestyle and a balanced lifestyle, that is?
Yeah. Well, I think over time, it's taken me some time, I have to be honest, to kind of get to a point where I feel like I'm more, have a better balance. I feel in the early days of, you know, especially if you're running your own business, you feel like you have to chase every opportunity. You never want to miss out on anything. You know, it's very hard to put boundaries around your work time, because you know, you could literally almost work every waking hour if you didn't, you know, put some boundaries around it. And I think over time I've realized how you know, if you only think about yourself and your business, everything has a cost, and it will affect, you know, on the quality of the time that you're able to give to those around you, and so on and so forth. So I think what I've come to now is having really clear boundaries around what's non-negotiable. So, you know, you can still work really, really hard, but within certain time boundaries. Like, you know, obviously there's exceptions, but for the most part, you know, you decide at this time for the evening. And also if I'm going to be traveling away. So my new rule is kind of like, I have my goals and the things I'm working towards, but under no circumstances am I willing to let it compromise the family relationships and the time that I can spend with the family. I've just come to a point, and maybe you also get to that point. Like, that might not be the way it is when you're starting your business necessarily. If you can, great, you know, but I feel like, and so it'll be different for each person too. Those are just my non-negotiables. You know what I mean? But it's about figuring out what are the things you don't want to compromise. Because if you don't set those boundaries, you know, it's very easy for work to just take over. And so that would be one piece of advice. What about you?
Yeah, I know, Tina, you're actually a teacher, you're a mom, and you're also a wife. I'm sure you're also a friend to many. So how do you balance your lifestyle?
Well, I was thinking about it as you were speaking, and it reminded me of the time that when you were starting your business and I was bringing literally meals on trays to you because you just couldn't bring yourself away. But I think what you'd said, Vaishnavi, at the beginning about communication in any relationship, that's what I realized is what I wanted to know what was happening, what was going on. So like, my time is important as well. So if you're not going to be there for dinner, or you're not going to help with the children, I need to know so I can put things in place. Those kind of boundaries. So this is family time now, or this is my work time. So
actually better communication is actually key, because I would be working and Tina wouldn't know, like, because I would just forget, to be honest, about like eating or whatever. I was like, I'm so absorbed. And so the point is that so I think developing better communication. Also, one thing that we've found we love doing together during the lockdown is going for walks in nature as well.
Lovely.
Reconnecting together as well.
And so I guess spending some time in nature is important, but by doing it together, we have like, and also if we were to sit down and have a chat, which we do as well, it feels like more pressure. But when you're walking, you just sort of can chat very freely, and you're spending good time together. It doesn't feel like under pressure.
Yeah, that's true. What can you tell me? What has been your biggest challenges, or whether it's one or two, or what has been your biggest challenge as individuals and also as a couple? And how have you worked to overcome these challenges to strengthen you?
Shall I start?
You can go first. Yeah.
For me, I think coming from a sort of British Asian background, there's always this pressure to be perfect, to do things perfectly, to do them on time. And I did. I had a good education. I studied hard. I did well. I went to Cambridge University. I studied to be a teacher. And then it hits you when you have to get married and you have to have children, and the opposite almost. There was always this inner conflict in me that, am I being a good feminist? Am I doing the right thing? Or am I not enjoying motherhood enough? Is this not right either? So there was always this inner conflict until I just had to make it sort of switch in my mind and go, actually, it's choice. There isn't a right way and a wrong way. It's what you decide at that time for you, and it's no one else's business and no one else's judgment matters. It's how you're doing and what makes you happy. So
that's a really good metaphor for motherhood or for life, because when you are always measuring your progress or your whatever you're doing according to someone else's measurement, it almost sucks the joy out of your life, because one person might think you're doing the right thing, and as you say, equally someone else will think you're doing the wrong thing. So it's only when we truly kind of go, what is right for us. And
also I feel like just thinking that you're complete as you are at whatever stage, because I see that with children now that I teach as well. Adults, they are just who they are, so we are as well. We're just there should be no judgment on other people. You just be who you're meant to be at that time.
And you're sort of on a journey. And I think for me, one of the hardest challenges was I guess accepting that I needed to sometimes ask for help, that I hadn't always got it completely figured out, that it was almost, I suppose I held myself to such a high account, to such a high standard, that actually I wasn't able to, I was always falling short, if you like, because it was so high. You know what I mean? So there's a great phrase we heard recently, wasn't it? To stop trying to be perfect so you can be good.
Sure.
Because when you're trying to be perfect, of course you're always going to fall short, because it's not possible. So in a way, even though you feel like your intention is such a good one to be the absolute very best, it almost starts to become a self hurting process. So you almost have to, in a way, it sounds like, I even find it hard to say it, but like let yourself off the hook of trying to be perfect, because in my mind I'm thinking like somehow that's a failure, right? How can I let myself off the hook? No mercy, you have to keep trying and try harder. But actually, just to accept I'm just a human. I'm not perfect, and that's okay, but I'll still try my best.
Sure.
But actually, I'm human. And just sort of accept the inherent flaw within that. But almost then that kind of is where you can begin to truly grow then, I think.
Yeah, well, life is actually the best teacher, and we're always learning. Every day is a new opportunity just to learn. What are your hopes and dreams for Be Inspired Films?
Well, making this film has been a real incredible journey on a personal level, but also as a film company, because as I said, normally our films are shorter films, and so we've had an incredible response, even from really sort of respected industry professionals. Yesterday, I had a call with a lady who's on the voting panel for the Academy for the Oscars.
Wow.
And she,
Congratulations.
yeah, so she watched our film and really liked it. And so it's been very encouraging that we're capable of producing, that kind of content that is appreciated by the industry. I think this next step now is to look at creating more documentary feature film content and also drama. Because like you said, with the young people, the children, how to create stories that are entertaining, but also, educational as well. It's harder with adults because it has to be very subtle. So Reese Witherspoon, famous American actress, also has her own production company, and she creates content which is just brilliant entertainment. But at the same time, in a very subtle way, it has some really deep messages around, challenging stereotypes, embracing kindness and things like that. So what was it, Big Little Lies, and
just really pushing women and their writing and giving them opportunities that relevant to everybody. So I'd love to move more into that kind of content, drama and documentary. So the next 10 years, we can speak to you in 10 years again and see what happened, but next 10 years, that's the direction that we hope to go in.
One of my best quotes from your production, your documentary, I can't, maybe you can help me here to fill in the words. Something about, if you educate a man, you're just educating a man. But if you educate a woman, you're educating society. Is that what, or community? Something like
more
that.
or less. I think it was originally a Gandhi quote, but I think the idea is that when you educate a man, he tends to think of that as his education, like for his progress, for him to move ahead in the world. Whereas, and again, we're generalizing, but when you educate a girl or a woman, she tends to think about then how can she educate the family, and she tends to think more collectively. And how can that, so the idea is that if you educate a girl, you educate the whole town or village, or I think the girl in the film says the whole world. But it's very much true. And so I guess the kind of, to wrap it all together, the closing message of the film is that we must educate the women, and that will have such a huge impact for them, but also for the community collectively. But if we don't educate the men and the boys to adapt that mindset that perhaps might hold women back, then it will be very hard for the progress that we want to see to happen as quickly as we would like.
That's very true. But in some cases, when women are actually very forthright, they are go-getters. Wherever they actually have a vision, they actually go for it. Some people see it as being bossy or too controlling. I know we're actually coming to an end, but can you actually just end with that? Give me some sort of advice on that.
I mean, I'll say something and then maybe you can finish. I mean, I think it's it is quite a fully loaded topic, because on one hand, maybe there is an idea sometimes that in life or in management or in the corporate world, in order to be heard or respected, I should behave in a more typically masculine way. And so instead of actually, now it may be that some women, like, that's natural, like that is their nature, but just one aspect of looking at it is instead of in the corporate world or in society, us appreciating the strength and the power of women through what they bring that's different from men. That's the whole idea of complementary. Even in the corporate world, we always choose teams of people that are not the same as each other. We want diversity because it's diversity of ideas and diversity of perspectives, and and so on. So actually, I feel like sometimes in the corporate world, in the past at least, there has been an idea that if I want to get ahead as a woman, I need to be tough and brash and these kind of things. And I hope that will change, because I think women have so much more than that to bring. And as you say, it does sometimes rub men up the wrong way, because they maybe feel threatened or intimidated by it. But then you have to ask yourself, what's the outcome? This is what I always feel like is, if the outcome, if it's not working, then of course the men need to adapt and grow. But also, if I was a woman, I think I would go with the approach that works. That's just, so I don't know. Did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess it's like, I think it's, again, coming back to children again for me, is teaching girls that, we don't silence them and say, you're being bossy and you shouldn't be like this. We're saying, actually, you're being really assertive. You're showing good leadership skills. This is how you channel it. This is how you use it. And sometimes it's the same, what we were saying, women are being, not behaving properly. And so do men. It's just, judge each case as it comes.
Exactly.
You don't judge them just there and then, because we have these stereotypes. It should be, what's this person's motivation for real? What do they want to get on this?
That's a really good point, actually, because it may be that a man or a woman is actually being, like, there will be occasions where they're actually being unreasonable, or they're being a bully. So this is exactly, we tend to oversimplify it by, oh, this is a man or a woman, but like, as you say, we need to look at it on a case-by-case basis. But it is hard to disentangle bias. Bias is a very complicated thing.
But we should look at, what are we valuing and encouraging in young boys, and why are we not doing that in girls as well?
Very true. Yeah, education is key. Maybe you can just narrow it down and give our change makers advice. So what advice can you give for change makers or fellow change makers?
Yeah, a friend of mine, so one of our clients is TED Talks, so TEDx London. We've been working with them for 10 years, and the curator of that, Mariam Pasha, I was talking to her about the film and about these gender issues and stuff, and she said she would see herself more on the activism end, which is the end where there's maybe a bit more forceful language and kind of protest, and like things really need to change. And I see myself more in the middle, as trying to be like a bridge. And she said that's why you need activists and you need campaigners. You need people who make noise about and protest, so that people are paying attention to something that maybe hasn't been addressed for a long time. And then you also need those people in the middle who are reaching out to both sides, almost like translators or conveners, because otherwise the danger is that we have people on each of the extreme ends of a spectrum, and nothing ever changes.
True.
We just shout at each other and disagree with each other and don't understand each other. And that's not going to help us as a collective. So I think there's a time and a place for different types of interventions. I just feel myself, so I suppose maybe the lesson is to figure out, which one are you? Are you the person who feels really strongly about something and wants to it and make a noise about it and go all out? Or are you somebody that understands that perspective but also wants to try and bring others along on the journey too, and you're more of a kind of a bridge? So I think knowing where you want to focus your energy, I think is
and you need both, don't you?
You need both. It's not one is better than the other. It's just which one is right for you.
Yeah, that's very true. Very good advice. And I think we're living in a time right now where there's a lot of change makers, and a lot of them are becoming more vocal. They're getting that voice and getting the confidence to show the world what they are and what they want, willing to do.
Yeah. I think it's just that thing, isn't it? Of you have to judge it by the result. And I think that's also a very important point is that if we look at things in isolation, it's easy to decide or to try and make an opinion about whether it's right or wrong.
Sure.
So like if you take an activist in isolation, I genuinely would say, well, you're not going to change people by speaking to them like that, just shouting at them and telling them they're wrong and whatever. However, that's a really valuable role because it's not in isolation. So I think one of the pieces of advice I could give is to try and always remember the big picture, you know?
Yeah,
so
true.
like, or somebody might watch one film and say, oh, this film doesn't address this. And you're like, my response would be, this film is not the only film in existence. It can't address everything.
Absolutely.
But as an offering or a component in a much, much bigger picture, it may play a small role.
Absolutely wonderful. How can the public find you?
I was going to make a stupid joke about giving them the sat nav directions. Well, firstly, I would love for people, if they're listening, to watch the film, if any of this has been of interest. So if they go to roadtovrindavan.com,
okay,
and I guess you can put that link in the notes.
There'll
be various screenings throughout the year that they can access the film on. But more broadly than that, they can find us on social media at Be Inspired Films. And I'm also at Ravinol. And I guess you're not so much sort of publicly on social media in a sense, really. In a professional capacity. She's joined me today for some moral support, so we could both share.
No, yeah. I'm happy to. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much to Ravinol and Tina for taking the time out of your busy day just to be here with me and my viewers to educate us. And it was actually absolutely insightful for me, and I'm sure for my viewers as well. I wish you both all the best in your journey, and more films. I'm looking forward to watching them.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye-bye.